I didn't see it as a stepping stone towards politics. It was just a stone which I saw in front of me and I decided to take a step onto it. There's more to politics than just what I've read and seen in the media. So I think it's a microcosm of actually how I think politics should be. We have to select people based on their ability and maturity rather than based on their age. It's important for us to go beyond just the transactional nature of our responsibilities. It cannot just be we only assist residents when they need help.
Mr. Gerald Giam has been an opposition politician with the Workers' Party for almost 17 years now. He was first an NCMP and has been an MP for Aljunied GRC since the 2020 general election. Now today he's sitting down with me on the usual place to talk about his journey to becoming a WP member, the challenges of being an opposition party, and how his first term as an elected MP has been. Mr. Giam, welcome to the usual place.
Thank you for having me on your show, Natasha. Please call me Gerald. All my residents and friends call me that.
Okay, so Gerald, many Singaporeans tend to see MPs and politicians through a very specific lens. You know, you do very serious policy-driven speeches and you debate on national issues in Parliament, right? So what is something about your personality that would surprise people who know you in that context of being an MP?
Okay, well, I'll say that my personality in Parliament is not that much different from what I am outside, and with my family as well. I think what would probably surprise people a bit more about me is that I'm really big into sports.
Oh,
I enjoy playing sports quite a bit. So
which one?
I played tennis since I was a kid, and I still play now a lot with my kids. And recently, I took up pickleball with my wife.
You hopped on the trend.
I was actually introduced to it by my residents. So I went by doing house visits, and I saw my residents playing. So I joined them for a game.
And they
invited me for subsequent. They invited me for subsequent games as well. Yeah. So I enjoy playing sports quite a bit. I mean, I think sports is very much like politics in many ways, or at least it's the way I want to see politics. You compete according to the rules. You get onto the court, you do your best and try and do what you can to make the audience happy. And in the case of politics, is to try your best to serve your residents and hope that they'll be satisfied with your performance. And at the end, there's a winner and there's a loser. And you just shake hands, and each side should be gracious. You know, the loser would just pick up the pieces and try and do better the next time. And the winner, well, should make sure that they don't shift the goalposts to ensure that they win better the next time. So I think that's how politics should be, and I think it's a good reflection.
So is there any other sport that you're interested in besides pickleball?
Well, I like cycling as well, and I hope to do more of that in the future. I cycle with my son quite regularly, but I have an open invitation from one of my residents to cycle with them on a cycling trip. So I am looking forward to that, actually, and I hope that I have more opportunities to interact with residents, even through sports.
That's quite cool that you're kind of like friends, you know, like hanging out with them beyond just being your residents.
Yeah, I mean, it's important for us to go beyond just the transactional nature of our responsibilities. It cannot just be we only assist residents when they need help, and then it cannot be that transaction. It has to be where we go beyond that and understand them a bit better, and sometimes understand some of their hopes and fears as well.
Okay, so you're on the pickleball trend. There was a TikTok trend a couple of days ago that I want to ask you about. Have you heard of this, like, I met my younger self for coffee trend?
No, I have not. Tell me about it.
Oh, it's so cool. I think it's kind of cool because people kind of take their younger self out on a date, and then they like reflect on how they have grown, or and then like how they imagine their past and present selves together.
Okay.
So I wanted to ask you, what would you say to your younger self? Maybe your 18-year-old self.
What would I say to my younger self?
Because now you're 47.
I'm 47.
Okay.
I'm 48 this year,
Okay.
and I mean, I wouldn't think that I would advise my younger self to do very much different. I think sometimes when you plan too much ahead and you like plan everything up front, it might be a bit difficult to execute everything. So it's sometimes important to be able to be flexible and adapt to the situation that you're in.
Did your 18-year-old self always know at that time that you were going to be in politics or involved in some way? Well, you were kind of involved in some way because you were deputy editor, right, of TOC, right?
Oh, that was sometime after I was 18.
Yeah.
When I was 18, I was still I think I was in university around that time. I went to university a bit earlier. And I think that was actually a time where I got interested in political issues, not necessarily politics. I didn't see myself in politics until quite a bit later. But it was during that time when I was in university overseas in the US, that's when I realized that there's more to politics than just what I've read and seen in the media growing up for the previous 18 years. So it's something that it prompted me to explore a lot more into that.
Okay, so let's talk about your move actually into politics and joining the WP, right? So you were previously a non-constituency MP. I think it was from, 2011, 2015, I get it right?
Correct, yes.
Okay, and this is your first term as an elected MP for Aljunied GRC.
Yes.
How different is that experience?
It's very different, actually. When I was a non-constituency MP, I didn't have direct constituents that I was responsible for. So even though I will be doing house visits and outreach in East Coast GRC and then Fengshan SMC, the volume and intensity of feedback that I got from residents was not the same as what I'm experiencing now. And so because of the increased volume of feedback I get, it helps me to have a lot more insights into the daily lives of residents, as well as the concerns and the issues that are impacting them. So that translates a lot into the issues that I raise in Parliament. You would probably notice that I raise a lot more grassroots and bread and butter issues, even things that residents may have raised to me, which may seem at first not so impactful. But on deeper investigation, we find out actually there's a systemic policy issue that might need some looking into. So those are the kind of things that we try and raise up.
Is there an example that you have of that?
Recently, not recently, but the last few years, there have been quite a number of residents who have come to us and said that they experienced scams. They got scammed, and the stories that they tell us are really heartbreaking. And that prompted me to really research more into that issue. And I spoke twice in Parliament. I gave 2 speeches regarding scams, most recently in January, about the Protection from Scams Bill. And it made me realize that, it's government policy is important, but the big businesses, banks, social media companies also have a big role to play in preventing scams from happening in the first place. Because a lot of these scams happen as a result of something that these residents saw on social media or through WhatsApp or other channels.
I believe one of the biggest issues that you had to contend with as an MP was the repealing of the 377A law, which you voted against the scrapping of the law. But when you made that speech, you actually said it was one of the most difficult speeches you had to make. So tell me about the process of looking at how to balance the secularity of the MP role versus your faith and conscience.
Right, good question. It still stands as the most difficult speech that I've ever had to put together. It's not just difficult because of the speech itself, but also because of the background preparation that we had to do. We had to have discussions within our party, among the MP caucus, with our party members, with our volunteers, with our constituents, with other groups, to understand what their concerns are, because we are not just speaking from our own thoughts and feelings, but it has to be based on what we have gathered from our constituents especially. So that process was quite laborious and quite involved. And I think in the end, what we did in the end, we decided that, or at least our party whip, who was also party leader, Mr. Pritam Singh, he decided that he was going to lift the whip and allow each of the MPs to not just vote according to their conscience, but also speak according to their conscience. And I think that was quite significant, because I think it helped us to be able to reflect the diversity of views that Singaporeans had on that issue. It wasn't deliberate that all of us had different views, but it did happen to be the case that our MPs, I believe, had reflected the diversity of views in society on this issue. And I think it's a microcosm of actually how I think politics should be. There should be negotiation, sometimes behind closed doors, but at the end of the day, we all have to come together and come up with a unified position. Now, this unified position doesn't mean that we all think the same way or vote the same way, but the position is that we agree that we will reflect the different views of Singaporeans and vote accordingly.
Was it difficult for the team, the party at that point, to have people with differing views like come together and sit down and talk about it? What was that like, for...
I mean, we all knew, we all know each other very well. So we all knew we had these different viewpoints, and we were very free to express that. I think that, again, doesn't mean that just because we have different views doesn't mean we cannot work together. In fact, I'm very good friends with my party colleagues, and I work very well with all of them, despite us having different views on some issues, especially these social issues like this. But I think it also forces us to come together and think of how we can do things that would be in the national interest. How can we take things forward? And how can we assure Singaporeans that despite different views being present, we can still work together and advance Singapore?
Okay. So you've been involved in politics in very different ways. I think I mentioned it earlier. There was a time you were deputy editor for the Online Citizen, and you also volunteered for Southwest CDC, which is like ages ago, right? Yeah. What made you decide to take the plunge into joining a political party versus like saying just continue to write about it for the website or volunteering on the ground?
Well, I mean, I think all those, I would say that every step that I took earlier on it wasn't a I didn't see it as a stepping stone towards politics. It was just a stone which I saw in front of me, and I decided to take a step onto it, and just to explore what I can contribute in those areas. So from volunteering in the CDC to joining the civil service, I was in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for some time, and then after that I went into I guess called NGO, because it was a online publication which was new at that time. I think all those were stepping stones in terms of discovering what is the area which I feel that I can contribute the best to. And as I experienced those different junctures in my life, I learned a lot. And I finally came to a conclusion that if I really want to make an impact in terms of having an impact on policies, being able to change policies for the better, which was always my interest throughout, that I would be able to contribute the best if I were in politics, and in particular opposition politics through the Workers' Party, because I felt that would be the best channel and vehicle in which I can be able to contribute and be able to value add to the whole conversation and take our country forward.
How do you come to a decision that Workers' Party represents what you stand for versus, say, like maybe another political party?
It was a very deliberate decision and journey. I think the Workers' Party first really caught my attention during the 2006 general election. I wasn't in politics then. I was still, I think, in the civil service at that time. But I read their manifesto from cover to cover, and I realized then that this is a party that's got has values and policies which I agree with, and it's a credible party, and that's why I wanted to be able to. I was still a very small party at that time. We still are a very small party now. And I wanted to be able to contribute to the growth of the party, because I felt that it's very important to have an alternative party present, and not just opposition parties for the sake of opposition parties, but having a strong alternative that people really have a choice when they go to the polls, and it's not just casting a protest vote, but casting a vote for the party whom they think is best to run their constituency.
And well, now you've been with the opposition for about 17 years, and when you first started back then, do you think the perception of opposition parties in Singapore has changed since you first, joined the Workers' Party?
I think the perception definitely has changed quite a bit, especially since 2006. I guess I'm sort of biased because that was a time that my perception of opposition parties changed significantly as well. And I think it's grown over the years, and it's reflected in the poll results as well, when people feel that it's a credible party that they can cast their vote for, and more importantly, it's a party that they trust to be able to run their constituency, because that's where the rubber meets the road, and that's where we spend most of our time actually dealing with problems, dealing with residents' concerns, dealing with municipal issues. That's where we spend most of our time dealing with, and if the party is not able to handle that, that's where residents must feel that they feel the confidence that the members of parliament that they elect would be able to handle that responsibility.
Is there a myth about opposition parties or MPs that you would like to debunk?
Well, sometimes, I mean, there's some people who still think that opposition parties are just trying to oppose for the sake of opposing. That's not the truth at all, actually. We analyze the situation, we analyze bills that are presented in Parliament, come to an independent assessment of it based on our conversations with residents and different stakeholders. And then we discuss among ourselves and come to that position. And if it's sometimes necessary to oppose it, we won't hesitate to oppose it. But every time we do oppose a bill or a motion, we'll always explain why we do so and propose a better policy that we can put forward. I mean, an example was during the 2022 budget debate, we actually opposed the budget. I think that was one of the first times we opposed the budget, and that was because of the GST increase that was being tabled at that time. And so we explained why we disagreed with the GST increase, how, among other things, it might contribute to the increase in the cost of living. And we came up with some alternative proposals. My colleague James Lim was explained how there was some different levers that we could be used, increasing the contributions from the net investment returns contributions. For example, using more years of the land sales to be able to contribute to the budget. All those things would be able, in our view, be able to top up the funding shortfall that the GST was supposed to do so. And we felt that the GST was not necessary at that time because it would impose an unnecessary burden on the lower and middle income residents.
So now that you've been in this role as an elected MP for almost 5 years, what's the hardest part about being an opposition MP, and how do you navigate the challenges?
Yeah, I think if you ask most MPs what the challenges are, it'll be things like, they'll say the things like time away from family, the pressure, the public scrutiny and all that. But I think for us in the Workers' Party and opposition, there's an added pressure that comes from looking back at history, what has happened to past opposition MPs and politicians in terms of legal challenges that they have faced, even sometimes what is ongoing now, what's happened in the last 10 years even. Those challenges are clear and present all the time for us, and we don't know when it would hit us, and that sometimes almost feels like there's a sword of Damocles above us waiting to just fall on us. And so that adds to the pressure that we have now in our daily work, but it also keeps us on our toes. I think there's a misconception sometimes we hear from residents and other people saying, oh, you just make sure you do things correctly, everything will be okay. Politics is not so simple in Singapore. Sometimes it's a bit more complicated. Sometimes you can do whatever you can. You can try and do whatever you can right, but sometimes things still don't fall in place. Sometimes things come from the left field, and you don't know what hits you. So,
well, since you brought it up, I was going to ask you that since the last GE, the party has been affected by different matters, and including now Mr. Pritam Singh's trial, right? That's ongoing. I mean, how have these incidents affected party morale or like the outlook for the GE?
It definitely has an impact. I mean, it saps our energy in many ways, because we have to energy and time because we have to spend time focusing on those issues rather than focusing on serving our residents. But it's something that I've come to realize that it is the norm. It is not something that is unusual in politics, and it's something that we have to accept. And anybody who decides to come into politics, especially join the opposition, has to be prepared for that, and to make sure that they do things as well as they can within the extent of what they can control. But I think internally and within our party, it has energized us in many ways into realizing that we have to work doubly hard to win the trust of our residents, and to ensure that we don't let any of our core responsibilities, like our municipal duties and all that, to suffer because of these distractions.
How has internally, how do you all support each other when these things happen. Like, in the last couple of years, there have been a few incidents between Raisa Khan and then Mr. Giam and then now with the trial. I mean, how does the party support each other, like with the MPs particularly?
Yeah, I mean, we have to definitely support each other because we are one party together and we consider ourselves a team together. So we will support each other, including helping the MPs in a neighboring constituency to be able to. We have done house visits on behalf of them sometimes to help them, and they have helped us as well. We cover each other's meet the people sessions to ensure that the residents who come for help, the residents need help. They don't really care about the politics that goes on behind, but they need the help at that point of time. So we have to make sure that at least one of us is there when they come and seek the assistance from us. So we do cover each other in terms of duties.
Has it affected you personally? Because as you mentioned earlier, all of your friends in some way, and then people have to leave the party over the last couple of years. What's your take on it personally?
It's painful. It's really painful because these are friends that we have built up friendships with over the years, and we've worked so closely. We've gone through battle together, and to have to part ways in such a fashion is definitely not pleasant at all. And that's why I feel that it's very important that moving forward, we continue to ensure that we are very careful and the MPs the candidates that we select. Mr. Pritam Singh has said that we have engaged third parties to do screening, and that's I know that's ongoing right now. And so I think that's part of the efforts that we're taking to reduce the likelihood of such events happening. I cannot say that it will never happen again, and it's happened to all different parties in Singapore. But I think it's important that we avoid the risk of such distractions from happening.
And I mean, it's interesting about the screening process. I think on one level, I wanted to ask, do you think it deters people from stepping forward? Because if I know that I'm going to have all my skeletons in my closet looked at, then maybe we just keep the...
Well, I think it definitely would deter some people from stepping forward, and I think that's a good good deterrence.
Would it have deterred you before we move on? Would it have deterred you back in when you were...
Well, keep in mind, I still have to be the parties there to decide whether they're going to feel me again, and so I mean personally, it wouldn't have deterred me because I think that I was determined enough to want to do what I did, and. But yes, it definitely would deter some people who may not want to undergo such scrutiny. And depending on what kind of scrutiny and what kind of skeletons they have in our closet, I mean, everybody has skeletons in their closets, but it depends on how big the skeleton is. They have to decide whether that threshold is high enough that they want to decide whether to go forward with it. And I think it's a good thing if they self-select themselves out, because it means that we don't have to deal with a big scandal in the future. But I think what I would hope that good candidates who may not be perfect people, and no one is, would be still willing to step forward and take that risk. And sometimes there might be things that we have all done in our past which we are not proud of. But it's something that we hope that residents also would accept, that we've changed our ways, and it's not the case that what we did when we were 18 years old is not necessarily what we are now. And I think I hope that good candidates from every party actually would step forward so that the Singaporeans have a good choice of candidates to choose from during the elections.
What is the party screening for actually? Like social media presence, or like do they go through an interview, or what's the criteria for this screening?
I haven't been through that screening myself yet, so I wouldn't know what they're doing, and I'm not involved in that process of the elections.
So everybody will have to go through it, even like existing MPs?
I believe I'm not sure. It might come to me as well. So.
Okay. Yeah. When you were in your 30s, when you first stood as a candidate in the 2011 G, right?
I was 34, I believe, when I first contested. 32 when I first joined the party.
And that was with East Coast GRC,
East Coast
right?
GRC.
Do you think being young works for or against a person? when they are chosen to stand in a Singapore general election?
I don't think that's a major factor, especially if you're already an adult. I mean, if you're past 25 or so, there's no reason why you would be any less mature than someone who's 45. I think it really comes down to the maturity and the ability of the individual candidate. There are some people who are 25 and very mature, very knowledgeable about the world, and there are some people who are 45 and are not very mature. So we have to select people based on their ability and maturity rather than based on their age. Similarly, I mean, for older candidates, I mean, we could conceivably have some older candidates, and just because they may not have the same levels of physical levels of energy that a younger person might have, it doesn't mean that they cannot bring in their wealth of experience and networks to be able to serve their constituents better.
So what advice would you give to some of the younger candidates we might see during the GE season, right? And from your own experience on the ground, starting at 34? Yeah.
Well, they should definitely study the history, study Singapore's history, study the political history, and study the Workers' Party's history, what struggles we went through in the past. Understand what we have gone through, understand our policy positions as well, so that when they come and speak to residents, they're not just a young upstart, but someone who has knowledge of what the party, what the residents have gone through, and using that knowledge, they'll be able to better serve the residents.
Okay. Well, actually, WP has seen a few departures from relatively younger. Okay, I don't want to put an age limit to it, like Mr. Chen Shomao, Daniel Goh, Mr. Leon Pereira, and then Raisa Khan, right? So obviously due to different circumstances, but how has the party regrouped following the departures of younger members, and what kind of like changed internally to continue to attract younger people to join?
Well, I mean, I think people come and go for, like what you pointed out, for different reasons. And sometimes it may not even be a negative reason. It could just be that, I've served my time and I've done what I can to serve residents, and I feel that I move on to other things. But I think the process of it has to be an evergreen process where we continually look out for new volunteers to make members, new members to be candidates. That process needs to be ongoing, and it cannot be done just during the GE period. It has to be done over the course of the electoral cycle, and we're always on the lookout for new blood, for volunteers who show a deeper passion, a deeper willingness to be able to go the extra mile for their residents.
When you meet young people on the ground, do you think they are interested in Singapore politics, or what's your read of younger people who and what they want out of their government?
I mean young people, they are a diverse bunch, and I wouldn't want to pigeonhole any of them into any classification of what they want the government to do, or even what policies that they want pushed. I mean, I've heard young people from across the political spectrum, some who are very, very liberal, some who are very conservative. So I don't think that there's any particular classification or categorization I could give to young people. But I'm always encouraged.
I could ask you what are their concerns about when you meet them and they meet you as an opposition MP.
Right. Yeah, I'm always quite amazed at some of the insights that they provide to us. Some of them are very passionate about things like the environment. Some of them are very passionate about issues that happen beyond our shores, like the war in the Middle East. And they've come to us and expressed those concerns, or as well as issues like LGBT rights or being against LGBT rights. All those kind of different diverse viewpoints I've heard them all from young people. And so it's always a very enriching experience to be able to engage them and talk to them about these issues and hear what their concerns are, because they provide a different perspective that we may not have seen.
This will be your fourth GEE that you've been contesting.
I think I've lost count already. Yes,
lost count already, right?
Yeah.
For yourself personally, what do you think will be different for this year? And what are you doing to prepare for the when we hit GE?
Every GE is at least in my experience has been very different. I contested twice in East Coast GRC and lost. So I've got my experience of losing under my belt as well. And this will be the first time I'm contesting election while as an incumbent MP. That's of course the caveat as to whether I'm selected by my party to contest.
Oh, maybe you'll go back to East Coast?
Well, we never know. So that's really up to my party to decide on where they want to field me or if they want to field me at all. And I think all the candidates are aware of that approach that our party takes. How is it different? I think we have come to a very different juncture in our stage of development in our country. We have of course had just a transition in the national leadership, and our party also has gone through a few transitions as well. And I think we have to go into this election keeping our ears very wide open to listen to what our residents are concerned about and try and address those concerns head on and not talk. I think it's always a risk sometimes for politicians to if they don't listen carefully to what the residents are concerned about, they will end up talking about things that they are passionate about themselves. And that's not necessarily the best approach all the time, because I could be very passionate about A when my residents are actually concerned about B. But if I spend all my time on issue A without addressing issue B, then the residents will feel that my concerns are not being addressed.
So based on the sensing on the ground, is there any particular issue that you think will dominate during the general elections?
Well, I mean, everybody says cost of living is an important issue. And yes, I believe that's an important issue. But I think each individual constituent and voter has their individual concerns. And while an issue like cost of living might be high on their concerns, everybody has individual concerns as well. So the challenge for us is actually to be able to talk to a wide diversity of residents to understand the different concerns, because we cannot all be just talking about cost of living. There are other issues that they're concerned about. I mentioned just now about scams. Scams might directly affect only a small proportion of people who are victims, but there are lots of other people who are concerned that they might be victims of scams. And so we have to address those concerns as well. And sometimes we have to address them upstream. What I mean is that we have to foresee what would be a concern to them in the future and try and address it as on a policy level, engage the government on that. So that's the challenge that we have to go through.
Was there any last words that you wanted to add based on perhaps your journey as an opposition politician or about the upcoming GE season?
Well, I just hope that everybody would it's the GE is a special time every 4 or 5 years. And for the majority of Singaporeans, it's almost like a show that they are watching. But I hope everybody would get involved and realize that they're not just spectators, but they are participants, and they are very important participants in this process. And so this is a time where you can, when everybody is a bit more interested in the issues at hand, engage your politicians, engage your MPs, and just really tap on try and ask them what they are really concerned about and what their policies are on different issues, so that you understand them better as well.
Okay, I'm going to be cheeky. If you had to tag a WP colleague to come on the show the next time, who would it be?
Tag a WP colleague?
Yeah.
Well, I think maybe one of the new candidates might be good. But I won't name who the new candidates are yet. But I think
you just send them to the usual place.
Yeah, that's who I'll push up to go and go onto the shows.
Okay, we'll chat after this to see who it is. Okay, so stay tuned for this new candidate from the WP. But that's it for today from the usual place. Now, if you're watching this episode on YouTube, subscribe, or hit the notification bell to get fresh content. And you can also catch the usual place on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or on the ST app. I'll see you next time.